Sticking with the NBA, some big news out of Portland. The Portland Trail Blazers have officially hired the Clippers assistant coach, Chauncey Billups, to be their new head coach in Portland. He's obviously replacing Terry Stotts, who was there for 9 seasons. And he helped guide the Portland Trail Blazers to 8 consecutive postseason appearances, but only 1 conference finals appearance. So Billups, of course, and he agreed to a 5-year contract. The Blazers wanted to sign him long-term. The credentials speak for itself. Chauncey Billups played in the NBA 17 seasons, a 5-time All-Star, an NBA champion, won a championship with the Detroit Pistons in 2004, won Finals MVP when they beat the Lakers in 5 games. And he was a part of some really special teams, not only with Detroit, but with the Denver Nuggets reaching the Western Conference Finals and the New York Knicks. At one point, he had brief stints with other teams, but those were the more notable ones. So Chauncey Billups, his credentials are there. Now, let me first say this. And he won Finals MVP as well, in 2004. Now, let me first say this. I understand that today in society, we live in a cancel culture. If someone makes a sexist, racial remark, or they're involved in any sexual allegations, it's essentially a cardinal sin. And I completely condemn all that type of behavior, and I think that there should be punitive measures that are sent. So I'm all for that. But I do think that sometimes we're so caught up in cancel culture that sometimes we don't take a step back and try and approach different circumstances with not any understanding, but maybe just some context as far as age. Most of the time, these types of comments come at a young age. Obviously, we saw Kevin Hart, who wasn't able to host the Oscars because of a homophobic tweet that he sent out early in his comedy career. Most of the time, though, a lot of these individuals have hopefully learned from those previous transgressions when they were younger. And I think Kevin Hart certainly did. Now, Chauncey Billups was involved in, there were sexual assault allegations levied against him in 1997 with Ron Mercer, who was his teammate. So we understand that from a societal standpoint. That's why there's a little bit of controversy surrounding Chauncey Billups, and there was a lot of fan backlash about this hire was because of his involvement in that sexual assault case that took place in 1997. He wasn't charged with the crime, but he settled in a civil lawsuit. So from an optics perspective, from a fan's perspective, I understand why there's backlash for that hire. From a purely basketball standpoint, from an X's and O's, from a talent standpoint, who's the best fit in Portland? There's no denying that Chauncey Billups is a tremendous hire. Tremendous hire for the Portland Trail Blazers. I think that this guy is has an absolutely brilliant mind for basketball. He obviously understands the game. And when you look at the Portland Trail Blazers and you look at their roster, this is a team that should have achieved more success. This is a team that on paper had a better roster than the Dallas Mavericks. They should have had a better record than the Dallas Mavericks. To start this season off, I thought they had a better record than the Phoenix Suns. They didn't have as much team chemistry, but you've got an MVP caliber player in Lillard. You've got a borderline all-star in C.J. McCollum. You got really talented players in Yusuf Nurkic and Norman Powell and Robert Covington and Carmelo Anthony. You've got some guys where you should be able to make some noise. And the fact that this past postseason, they got bounced in the first round by the Denver Nuggets in 6 games without Jamal Murray, there's no question that a lot of the players could have stepped up surrounding Damian Lillard. But what that highlighted was a coaching discrepancy. and a coaching disparity. Because as good as Mike Malone is as a coach, the Denver Nuggets shouldn't have beaten the Portland Trail Blazers in the first round. Talent-wise, the Portland Trail Blazers are way more talented than the Denver Nuggets, but it was coaching. A lot of that was coaching up the players. And Chauncey Billups, what you get in bringing a guy like Chauncey Billups in is not only a guy with tremendous cachet, played in the NBA 17 seasons, but what was his moniker? His moniker was Mr. Big Shot. So he can relate to Damian Lillard. He can resonate with Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard will respect him. Chauncey Billups has the type of presence that he commands respect when he walks into a room. He's got a big presence about him. He's got a low, deep timbre in his voice. He knows basketball. He played point guard for 17 years, so he's a great leader. He's a great motivator. Players respect him. He's good at galvanizing troops. He's good at orchestrating offenses. He's good at leading, not only from the bench, but when he was a player on the court. And when you look at the Portland Trail Blazers, the reality is they just need a new voice. I still think that on paper, they could extract more out of this team, especially defensively. This team has been atrocious defensively for years, and now you bring in a guy in Chauncey Billups who has been a part of some ferocious defensive teams. The 04 Pistons are one of the best defensive teams ever assembled, with the Wallace brothers and Tayshaun Prince, and Richard Hamilton and Chauncey Billups. They were nasty defenders. Ben Wallace, Rasheed Wallace. This was a really good defensive team, and it took heroic efforts from Kobe in 04 to force a 3 and over to force the game to overtime in game 2. A really good defensive team. I think that Chauncey Billups can extract a little bit more defensively out of this Portland Trail Blazers team than they're accustomed to. So I think that this is an absolutely tremendous hire as far as X's and O's, as far as basketball acumen, as far as what he brings to the game, and perhaps the type of messages that he can send to Dame, to CJ, to this team. I really like him as a head coach. I think he will work out perfectly.